Namaste and Swagatam to all of you in this webinar organized by both ways uh, that are World Association for Vedic Studies and Wider Association for Vedic Studies. Now we are starting our program with Waves Kul Geet. Adarsh, please
जी जी
play it.
प्रस्तुत है वेब्स कुलगीत।
वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा, वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा।
वेद है माध्यम जिसका न्यारा,
वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा। अपरा से जीवन निखार कर परा से पाए अक्षर ज्ञान।
अपरा से जीवन निखार कर परा से पाए अक्षर ज्ञान।
सत्यं शिवं सुंदरम के हम सिद्ध कर पाए सब वरदान। यही परम उद्देश्य हमारा, वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा।
वेद से दे रहा बोध तरंगी, वेद से दे रहा बोध तरंगी। भारत की विद्या पहचाने,
वेद पुराणों स्मृति ग्रंथों में निहित अमूल्य सार हम जाने। तत्व ज्ञान ही बोध हमारा, वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा। दशकों से है वेब्स दे रहा अवसर चर्चा का, चिंतन का।
दशकों से है वेद से दे रहा अवसर चर्चा का, चिंतन का।
एक मंच पर सबको लाना ध्येय रहा हर सम्मेलन का। वैश्विक हित कर्तव्य हमारा, वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा।
ऋतं भरा प्रज्ञा से युत हूँ, ऋतं भरा प्रज्ञा से युत हूँ। भ्रमजालों से दूर बचे हम,
स्वस्थि भाव पूरित जीवन हो, अनृत मार्ग से दूर रहे हम। चिदानंद गंतव्य हमारा, वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा।
वेद है माध्यम जिसका न्यारा,
वेदाध्ययन है, वेदाध्ययन है, वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा।
Today, our honorable speaker is Miss Sahana Singh, who will be speaking on the topic, Does India's Educational Heritage Matter? Acknowledging the importance of Indian heritage. Here I recite a prose mantra from Yajurveda, which underlines goodwill among the teacher and the students during their educational period. Om Sehanavavatu Sehanau Sah Viryam Karvavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Here, student and teacher is praying for the welfare and for the smooth educational process during all their educational life. I think it was a big day for us when we decided to organize monthly webinars on any interesting and scholarly topic for the members of WAVES and other interested persons. WAVES is a society dedicated to the promotion and preservation of Vedic and ancient knowledge. Till date, we have organized a number of programs and lectures, and now under WAVES also, this webinar also, we have organized 7 lectures. This is our 8th lecture in the 8th month, and some of our distinguished speakers were Dr. Raj Vedam, Mr. Rajiv Malhotra ji, Dr. Subhash Kagji, all from USA, and Dr. Yamini Bhushan Tripathi from Banaras Hindu University. In the series of WAVES webinar, today we are fortunate to have Ms. Sahana Singh, a very popular narrator, famous author, well-known commentator, and above all, a great human being. I met her twice in the conferences of WAVES only. With a professional background, she is an environmental engineer also. She has served as the editor of Asian Water magazine. Beside this, Ms. Sahana Singh has written on diverse subjects such as Indian history, water management, and education also. She is recognized for her Bharatiya Drishti, Indian viewpoint. Madam Sahana has authored 2 books which talk about India's educational heritage and intellectual legacy. Today's talk of Ms. Sahana ji will explore the relevance of India's unique educational heritage and the need to stay connected with timeless knowledge we receive from our ancient wisdom and culture. Now, I will shortly introduce myself. Presently, I am totally engrossed in the work of President of WAVES India. Formerly, I served as a professor of Sanskrit in the University of Delhi and authored many books for higher studies. Ved and Vedic study is my main subject of research, writing, and teaching. I and our distinguished audience also, which is very learned, very knowledgeable, are very curious to listen to our learned guest speaker, Ms. Sahana Singh ji. But before that, I want to mention here that here is a chat box, and you can write your question or queries or comments in that. And after the lecture, we will be having question and answer session, and then these questions will be dealt with. Now I invite Dr. Sahana Singh, Miss Sahana Singh, to deliver her lecture on the topic, Does India's Educational Heritage Matter? Miss Sahana ji, आइए.
Thank you so much. Namaskar to everybody. It's a great privilege to be presenting before all of you. Many of you are people who have inspired me greatly. so that waves also, all the names that you mentioned, the previous speakers and the webinars are all people whose books I have read and who have inspired me. So it's I'm the little person out here speaking to all in front of all of you greats. But yes, it has been a wonderful journey for me to know about India's educational heritage and share all that I have found during my research. So I've chosen this topic about why does India's educational heritage matter? Because this is a question I often get when there are lots of people who say, okay, we were great, we did all these great things, we had great gurus, but then we should look at the present and we should look at the future. We should not be in the bask in the glories of the past. And that is why I keep coming back to this topic. Why does it matter even today? It may have been in the past, but it matters today as well, even more than before. So that is why I titled my lecture that way. So let me just share my slides because it makes more sense when I share. Please give me some heads up that you can see the screen.
We can see yours.
Okay, wonderful. So does India's educational heritage matter? And my talking points would be, first of all, what is India's educational heritage? Because it's not just about we were great, but what was great about us? We should know some of those things. And then, why is it critically important for Hindus to be rooted in their civilizational knowledge? So these are the two main topics that I will address today. Let's get to some basic facts. And in the center, of course, you can see a student, maybe in the 19th century, a Brahmin student who is focused on learning. And you can see how his hair has been tied to the back. There's a nail on the wall and so that he cannot drop off to sleep. This is just giving you an indication of how much dedication was there for study. Now, India had a very ancient tradition of formal discipline teaching and learning that attracted students from around the world. So this stands out with India. There have been other great civilizations which also contributed knowledge. But when it comes to India, we go a far way back, far more back than the others. We are far more antique. And the importance given to education and the whole ecosystem of learning that was created is far more big, it's far more institutionalized than it was in other civilizations. So parents would push their children to get into the top schools such as Nalanda and Ujjain universities. Even in ancient times, whatever we are seeing today is actually a faint reflection of what was happening thousands of years ago. So there would be these many parents pushing their students, their children to go and get into the top universities of India. Now, there were many forest universities. So long before the brick and mortar universities came to India, like Nalanda, which had those big lecture halls, we had forest universities, which were just right in the midst of forests. There was no need for hard infrastructure. And so the different disciplines like sciences, math, astronomy, prosody, literature, etymology, all these subjects were taught right there in the forests. So, for example, there would be one tree with one guru sitting under it and surrounded by students. And that would be like one department, one discipline being taught. And then there's another tree a little away under which another guru is teaching another set of students. And similarly, many, many such locations in the forest, which was as good as a university because they were all different departments. And very often there would be a presiding guru who is presiding over all these gurus and making sure that the subjects are being taught properly. So that I would call that a forest university. But then, of course, now after we were colonized, we go back to the universities which had structures, which had all those processes by which degrees were awarded, and then they were called universities. Whereas our ancient Indian universities were not called universities by the Western world. Now, it's important to notice that we had significant rites of passage to mark educational milestones. So of starting the education, graduation, all these were milestones that are part of our ceremonies, which are still being performed today. That shows how institutionalized it was. So here is a picture of Vidyarambha. Actually, this is Hate Khodi. In Bengal, it's called Hate Khodi, which is performed during Saraswati Puja, when the child learns how to trace alphabets for the first time. And a Panditji will teach her how to do it. And in other parts of India, it's called Vidyarambha, where rice, there's a plate of rice on which the alphabets are traced. So this is a very important ceremony when the child learns, gets acquainted with alphabet. Then there is another educational ceremony called Upanayana, in which the child goes into higher learning. So until the Upanayana ceremony, the child is a child who's treated like a child. But after the Upanayana ceremony, when the sacred thread is given, the whole lifestyle has to change. Usually the child would be sent to live with the guru for X number of years, learn various subjects, and then come back only after the education is complete. And then there would be another ceremony called Samavartana, which was the graduation ceremony. And many of the chants that are, the mantras that were chanted were common between the Upanayana and Samavartana, but they're all very meaningful verses. So if you look at those ceremonies and compare it with the graduation ceremonies, the convocations that happen in today's universities, you will see that those ancient ceremonies were far more profound and had a lot to tell the students about what to remember, how to conduct themselves, and so on. Now, here's a picture of, let me just move my, okay. This is from my book, Revisiting the Educational Heritage of India. This map is there in my book, which shows you the spread of educational centers all over India. Most of us just know Nalanda, Takshashila, and a few other names. But when I started doing my research, I found that almost the whole of India was covered with advanced education centers. So north, south, east, west, everywhere. In the west, of course, there was desert, so there were fewer centers. But look at the north, where you have Takshashila, Sharda Peeth. So Sharda Peeth was, Kashmir itself was called Sharda Desh because it was the land of Sharda or Saraswati. And so the temple where she was worshipped had an annex which was used for as a library as well as for discourses. So it was like a university itself, Sharda Desh. Then you had Purushapura, Bamia, you can see various other names in the north. And then in the east, you can see so many of them: Nalanda, Vikramshila, Mongir, Udantapura, Telhada, Patliputra, Mithila. All these were in the east. And these universities did not exist at the same time, these centers of education. They were in different time zones, but I've put them all together in the map just to show the geographical spread. And in fact, Telhada is a university that was dug up only in 2009. So we still do not know, we haven't dug out all the educational centers that were in existence because they are all covered by layers and layers of habitation. So it's hard to now we have barely dug, I think, 5% of India's land to see the archaeological artifacts that lie below it. And in the south, you can see so many temple universities like Kanchipuram, Ennairam, right? Kumbakonam. All these are temple universities. So our universities could also take the form of temples. They were not necessarily just brick and mortar buildings again. They would be temples, since knowledge was sacred and Saraswati was the goddess of knowledge and we worshipped her. So the temple rooms could be used for teaching classes or to hold debates or discourses. So I think I will move to the next slide. But if you want to know more about these universities, please read my book. Now, the teacher occupied the highest position in society. That is a hallmark of our civilization, far more than the king. The king was not the most important person in the civilization. It was the teacher. And the teacher was given this huge status and everybody bowed before the teacher. And it was the duty of everybody to support the teachers and the students to make sure they had no want of anything. So scholars were freed from the burden of earning a livelihood because the entire society provided financial and personal support, right? Donations to teachers and educational institutions were highly esteemed, carrying great merit and recognition within society. And we can see remnants of that even today, but not as it used to be hundreds of years ago. Even the British have pointed out that that people feel very honored to give something to the teacher. There was also the concept of Guru Runa, that you owe to the Guru. Just like you have Pitra Runa, you have Guru Runa, where if you have been taught by a Guru, then you are in debt and you have to pay back that debt. The relationship between the Guru and Shishya was characterized by not just knowledge sharing, but also personal growth and spiritual development. So the Guru, the word Guru is a very deep word. It is not the same as Acharya or Adhyapaka. There was this spiritual development that happened because the Guru would guide the student, not just to learn the subjects at the material level, but to understand them at the higher level. The guru embodied knowledge like a walking, talking book. This was the reason that the students were living with the guru in a gurukula, because by doing that, they could observe the guru all the time. They could listen to what the guru says at different times of the day. When the guru is in a state of inspiration, he would share more knowledge. Other times, maybe he would teach something materialistic. But then again, there are times when he would be in a different frame of mind and would share higher knowledge. So being with the guru all the time enabled the students to learn different things which could never be put into one book. So this was experiential learning at its best. And another interesting thing was that the guru would not give answers straight away. So we have examples of students asking questions to the guru, but the guru withholds the full answer and instead gives a task to do to the student. And in the process of doing the task, the student would get the answer to that question. Now, there was a distinction between lower and higher education, right? So lower education was what 95% of people got. And lower does not mean lower in a demeaning way. But lower education was, worldly education, what you need to live, to transact in this world. So skill-based education, different kinds of skills were being taught. Mostly in the Jati families, all the Jatis used to preserve their knowledge in the lineages. So whichever Jati, it would be carpentry, it could be any other thing, like hair cutting, uh, textile making. All these were different disciplines, different skills, and which were in different jatis. And they would make sure that all the children learned that, or whoever came from outside and wanted to learn would also be accommodated. And in this way, the skill-based education was what 95% of people got. But they had a basic understanding of the Vedas. They were all within the Vedic framework, because they would be listening to stories, they would be going to temples. So it was all within the Vedic framework. And then there was the higher education, which was only which was taken up by 5% of the population, because not everybody would be interested in that kind of education. Hardly anybody, because who would want to spend the whole day mastering Sanskrit, learning grammar, learning all those esoteric subjects, which involves a lot of tapasya. So there's a misconception that, there are these people who want to learn the Vedas and they're not being allowed to learn the Vedas. It wasn't like that. Most people, in fact, were not interested in it. Only those who were seriously interested would get in, and they would be filtered through according to merit, and the best ones would get through to those higher centers of education. Now, higher education meant greater self-awareness. That was part of it. When you went into higher education, it was also about elevating your mind into a higher state of consciousness, and deep immersion in the Vedas. And ultimately, it was like that famous saying, Sa vidya ya vimuktaye. So knowledge was that which liberates. So when you went for higher education, you have to transcend all that you have learned, all the material knowledge that you have, and go beyond that. Now, I have taken out 4 main attributes of ancient Indian education. There are many, many more, but I just want to oversimplify it. So I've taken out these 4 aspects. First, it was nature-centric. Second, it was interdisciplinary. Third, it was holistic. And fourth, it was purposeful, not arbitrary. Nothing was random. It was very purposeful. So let's look at the first attribute, nature-centric. Classes were held in the midst of nature as far as possible. As you know, ashrams were located in verdant areas, and even in the cities, there were, of course, centers of learning, but they would try to find quiet places where there is nature. And so the classes would be held in the midst of nature, and nature herself would be a teacher, teaching a lot of things. So countless discoveries towards higher truths were got through observations. For example, students would be sent to graze the cows. So some students, not the same students every time, they would be asked to graze the cows. And in taking the cows out and bringing them all back at the end of the day, the students would learn a lot of things. They would be forced to observe the behavior of the cows. And in that way, they would understand the behavior of animals and living beings and so on. They would be asked to bring water from the well. The guru would ask students to bring water from the well, and that would teach them so many things about the effort that goes into bringing water, and so treat water with care, those kind of things. Observing the changing seasons, watching the germination of a seed, preparing herbal concoctions, all these were ways of learning from nature. And elements of nature were studied in great detail. And sustainability was built into every discipline. There was no separate subject called environmental engineering, which I studied, or sustainability engineering, because it was part of the lifestyle itself. It was part of the classes itself. And events that were observed in nature were correlated with human life. So because everything was in the midst of nature, so there would be thunder, there would be lightning, there would be changing seasons, and all these were correlated with life itself, human life. And in this way, it was very nature-centric. So I have taken out this example from Chandogya Upanishad, in which you can see that what the guru is teaching the student. Of course, they are father and son in this case. And so the student, Shwetaketu, has been asked to see what is inside the seeds of a tree. And he's saying, I do not see anything inside the seeds of the banyan tree. And then what is his guru doing? He's slowly pushing him into going deeper into, is it really nothing? Or is it that you're not seeing it? So he's saying in that invisibility exists the tree. Though you're not seeing the tree inside the seed, but it exists. And the tree emerges from the seed and manifests only when it is pushed by the subtle energy that you cannot see. And it is the same subtle energy that is in all the living beings. So in this way, sage Uddalaka is teaching the finer aspects of consciousness to Shwetaketu. The second attribute that I mentioned was interdisciplinarity. And to give you an example of that, this is a shloka from Charaka Samhita, where it is saying that a physician who has learned one science only cannot be sure of his own science. In this case, it's Ayurveda. And for this reason, the physician has to be versed in many sciences. So this shows to you that like what we have a lot of discussions on how we should be interdisciplinary. The students of civil engineering should know what other disciplines are doing, so that maybe there will be some sparks of ideas created. But that was very natural in ancient India. So it is actually told by Charaka himself that if you're just studying only medicine, only plants, then you will not be sure of your own science. You have to know a little bit about other sciences as well in order to understand your own subject, your own science. The third attribute was holistic. Now, holistic is a buzzword in all schools today, international schools. They'll say we give you a holistic education. But actually, if you want to know what is holistic education, you have to explore ancient India and see what they were teaching and how they were teaching. There were no artificial barriers between math, art, and religion. Okay, one led to the other. So the sun, for example, Surya, the sun could be worshipped as a divine being, which will come in the category of religion today. But that did not stop them from calculating the distance between the earth and the sun, which would come under the category of math today. At the same time, beautiful poetry was composed to invoke the power of Surya Devata, which would come under art and literature. So in this way, you can see that all these subjects are segueing into each other, and it's so holistic in a natural way. The sacred and the rational both were blended together. They did not clash. They did not affect each other, which is very different from how it was in Europe, right? So geometry was used to build accurate altars for the yagyas. So you can see that they needed to know, the areas, for example, the areas of the squares and the rectangles, they had to know, because there were a lot of formulas involved in that the squares of this should be equal to the square of something else. The area of two shapes should be the area, the addition of two areas should be the sum equal to the area of the third shape. So all these calculations were there, which had to be done before performing ceremonies. So geometry was used for yantras as well, which were drawn at the time of Homer's. Then astronomy and trigonometry was used to calculate the auspicious timings for rituals, because they didn't want to hold rituals at a time when transits are happening between two planets. So they would want it to be free from that. To know all those things, a great knowledge of trigonometry was needed, and astronomy too. So in this way, you can imagine the priests, who are considered to be religious people today, they are the ones who have knowledge of math and science and geometry and so on. which is in contrast to Europe, where the scientific community had to fight with religious leaders in order to do what they wanted to do in peace, right? It was only during the age of enlightenment that the Western world achieved freedom from religious dominance. So this whole idea that religion needs to be separated from science has come from the West, because there was a huge fight. Religion would constantly tell scientific people that they were wrong and they shouldn't be studying something, or they are going to the devil by doing a certain calculation. Like, for example, zero was considered to be a bad number, a satanic number, zero, negative numbers. But these things did not exist in India. The fourth attribute was that our education was purposeful, not arbitrary. And to illustrate that, I think many of you would know how Sanskrit is studied, how the syllables are classified in Sanskrit. So I'm sorry, the diagram is a little bit blocking the text. So the alphabet is arranged according to the points in the mouth from where the sounds are articulated, which is very different from English. English or any other European alphabet, where A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, there's no connection between each of these letters in the way they are arranged, right? They're just arranged in a random way. But look at how our letters were arranged in the alphabet. We had K, K, G, G, Ng, which is pronounced from the kantha, from the neck. So they are the kanthya. Then we had Ch, Ch, J, J, Nya, which is talavya, which is pronounced from the talu. Then we had murdhanya letters, T, Th, D, Dh, Na, which is going further up. Then T, Th, D, Th, Na, which is pronounced from the teeth, dantya. Then finally the oshtya, from the lips, we have P, P, B, Bh, M. So that shows to you the scientific approach even to language that we had in India. Just an example, there are hundreds of them. I came across this interesting example where there is this French astronomer called Le Gentil in the 18th century, who tried to understand the methods of the Indians, right? India was very well known for astronomy. So some of these Europeans wanted to learn from the Brahmins how they do the calculations. And so Le Gentil was one of those French astronomers who sat with the Brahmin to understand how he calculates eclipses so accurately. And he was perplexed at his method. He saw that the Brahmin was chanting some verses, then he moved some shells on the floor, on some squares, and then he calculated the timings of the eclipses. He didn't use any tables and he didn't use any books. So this guy was very perplexed, but he sat with him and tried to understand. And he appreciated the speed with which the Brahmin did the calculations without any mistakes. And also he appreciated his calm demeanor. He said, look at this man, he's so calm and he's sitting on the floor and he just does a few things, moves things on the floor and he chants something. And without looking at it in any table, he gives me the exact time of the next solar eclipse. So he was very fascinated. And this gives you some glimpse of the pedagogy where they're using very different methods of calculations, right? And I think we should do research in this area. We don't know much about what they were doing, but I think it's very interesting. Of course, Le Gentil did lay out in his book about how the Brahmin did the calculations. And he said that for me, it's very difficult because it involves a lot of memory, that a lot of things are kept in the mind and then another set of calculations are done using those numbers without writing down. And Le Gentil said that he would not be able to do it. It's very difficult. So he said, let the Europeans do it in our way and let the Indians do it in their way. Both are valid. I've also put down these four pedagogical tools. Again, there were many, many pedagogical tools, but I thought, let me just pick these four ones, which are very interesting. First, the games that were used to teach, then stories and memory training, which was a very important tool, and debate, four of them. And you can see on the right side of the screen, the snakes and ladders game, which is very popular. But the way it used to be played in ancient times is not the way it is done today. Today is just a numbers game where you cast the dice, you get some number like 8 or 9, you move your piece to 8 or 9. And if there's a ladder, then you climb the ladder to another higher number. If you get a snake, you come down to a lower number. But in ancient times, they had on each of these squares, they had a virtue or a vice on the square. So something like kama, krodha, these are all the bad qualities, the vices. And then the good qualities would be on some of the squares, right? Like dana, like what do you call ahimsa, and those kind of things would be good qualities would be on some squares. So if while playing the game, your piece landed on a square with ahimsa, then you would move up the ladder to a higher square. But if you landed on krodha, then you would come down the snake to a lower number. So in this way, children, while playing this game, they would learn about what are the good values and what are the bad values without any preachiness. Nobody is lecturing to them, this is good or this is bad. But just by playing these games from childhood, they knew that kama is bad in the bad sense, krodha is bad, all that lobha is bad. Those things they would know just by playing games. And these games are found in different versions all over India. Gyan Chopar, Mokshapath, Mokshapatamu in, I think, in Telugu, and all these things. Different names, but the games had the same impact. Stories, of course, I don't need to tell you how stories were used to teach. Ours was a civilization that understood the power of storytelling through medium like Ramayana, different mediums like Ramayana was used, Mahabharata, Puranas, songs, dance, drama, puppet shows, paintings, all these were telling stories. And then we had Panchatantra, Hitopadesha, which were using talking animals to impart practical wisdom. So in this way, again, it didn't sound preachy and boring because the animals were teaching you something and the children would love to hear it in that manner. And children would not even know that they are learning Niti Shastra when they are hearing these stories and learning the morals of these stories, right? And Panchatantra stories were plagiarized like anything. They were traveled around the world, they were modified, they were made into, the animals were changed, but the story would be the same and so on. And they influenced the narratives like Aesop's fables, which was originally told by Aesop, a slave in ancient Greece who probably came from the Indian side, from the Asian side, and he told these stories, and that's how they became known as Aesop's fables. So stories were used to teach. Memory training is very interesting. In India, there was a lot of emphasis given to memory, and you could not get into any university if you didn't have a good memory. Now, today we know there's a superior learning curve when memory is enhanced, right? There is also a study called the Sanskrit effect, which points towards cognitive improvement caused by Sanskrit chanting. So if you look up Sanskrit effect, you will find more about how this Italian scientist saw the impact of chanting on the brains of Brahmins. Now, Yi Jing, a visiting Chinese student, has also written about the extraordinary memory of the Brahmins. Entire books were memorized by them, okay? But again, it's not just Brahmins who had good memory. Brahmins, of course, would memorize Vedas and various Ashtadhyayi and so on. But the entire population memory had a good memory, which is said by many observers. It was an important attribute for various professions because pharmacists, washermen, the dhobis, the balladeers, the ones who sing, the bards as they call them, the ones who sing the stories of kings, the genealogists, all these people needed good memory. So good memory was found even among the local population who are not Brahmins. They would all remember so much. Now, if you look at the ways of Vedic chanting, it's very fascinating to see how it was preserved down the ages, simply because there were 11 different ways of chanting, which would aid memorization. So there was some Hitapatha in which, if A, B, C, D, F, if you see, A is a word in the Veda, in the stotras, then A in the suktas, then A is one word, B is one word, C is one word, suppose. So Samhita Pata was just saying all those words one after the other. And Padapatha was the second way of memorization, where there would be a pause between each of these words, like A, B, C, in that manner. Then Kramapatha was like A, B, B, C, C, D, D, E. So in this way, you would chant it. Jatapatha is a little more complex. You see A, B, B, A, B, then B, C, C, B, B, C, C, D, D, C, C, D. Look at that. And then you have Mala Patha, Shikha Patha, Rekha Patha, Dvaja Patha, Danda Patha. And the hardest one was Ghana Patha. Just look at how complicated it is. A, B, B, A, B, C, C, B, A, B, C. So in the years that they took to learn the Vedas, finally, when they came to Ghana Patha and they're able to chant the Vedas in these different combinations of sounds, that is when they have completely memorized it and it can be passed down to the next generation without any errors. And that's how we have got the Vedas down after thousands of years without any distortions. And this shows to you how memory was being developed. Very interesting ways to aid the memory, to expand the memory bank in your brain. Debate. Debate was another very important pedagogical tool because the Indian civilization fostered a spirit of rational inquiry, closely observing physical phenomena and applying rules of logic to speculate on their underlying causes. So there would be lots of debates. Knowledge progressed because of these debates that have happened between different schools of philosophy. And the very reason there were different schools of philosophy is that they were disagreeing when they were debating. And so when it came to a point where they didn't want to stay together, they would form another group or sampradaya. And then they would keep debating. So this is how knowledge progressed, and new entrants would come, listen to the debate and decide who makes more sense to them. And debate was an integral tool for learning, as evident from references in Tarka Vidya, references to Tarka Vidya in various texts. So Ramayana, Mahabharata, Skanda Purana, all these texts talk about Tarka Vidya, which is the science and art of logic and debate, which shows to you how important it was. And we know that there are now, we know about how institutionalized it was, how scientific it was, that how every debate, the way points were deducted for, for not speaking coherently or not speaking, not addressing the point of the premise of the argument. All these things were considered while debating. And in this manner, kings often organized intellectual tournaments where the best debaters were awarded. Superior knowledge, debating prowess, and public speaking skills were awarded. And they were the people who won debates, the scholars would be taken around the city for everybody to know that they are their role models. Very unlike today. So when we talk about India's educational legacy, thinkers from ancient India, all these gurus like Kanada, Sushruta, Charaka, Aryabhatta, they have left a profound influence on the disciplines that we are still pursuing today. So, the discoveries and innovations from India are in math, science, medicine, language. They have laid the groundwork for all the knowledge that we have, that we are studying in different universities. So there is now a renewed interest in studying Indian knowledge systems, which reflects that our legacy still continues to be relevant. This is a diagram that I have in my book, which shows how Indian knowledge was transferred out, how India's knowledge spread to the world, what went to Greece, how it went to Europe, then Middle East, China, Japan, all these things. You would find it in my book, right? How Charaka's oath, which became Hippocratic oath. The students of medicine today have the Hippocratic oath, but actually it is just a rehash of the Charaka's oath. Then to China, knowledge of ophthalmology, gynecology, all these things went from India. And this is the longest chapter in my book, which talks about how Indian knowledge went to the West. Now I come to why Indian educational heritage matters. I make the assertion that being rooted in Indian knowledge makes you a force for good. Because when you are rooted in Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, you are able to see the big picture of everything. You are able to see beyond your body, your country, all the boundaries that the world has imposed upon you. You're able to see beyond it when you are rooted in Indian knowledge systems. And you realize that everything is connected. Nothing is just lying there nowhere with no connections to the rest of the world. You realize the connections. Then I also have come across this quote by Einstein, where he says that you cannot solve problems with the same thinking used in creating the problems. And when I look at the world's problems today, like climate change, the huge carbon footprint that we are having, or the pollution that we are doing, the pollution of rivers and seas, the mountains of garbage, mental health issues, all these problems of today, I can see that they were not created by the Bharatiya Drishti. Right? And so they're created by some alien, the Western Drishti. And if you want to solve it, you cannot solve it from the same Drishti. You have to use another Drishti, our own Drishti. That is why it is important to be rooted in our Indian knowledge systems. The Sanatana worldview is needed to bring back the balance to this world. So it is not bringing back Sanatana Dharma, making it strong is not just for the Hindus, but it is for the balance of the world. Now, this is a topic that Rajiv Malhotra ji has dwelt on to a great extent, the dangers of Western universalism. So this is another reason why India's educational heritage matters, because you would otherwise be rooted in Western universalism, which leads to dismantling of indigenous understanding. It may leads to subverting of dharma by the civilizing mission of Christianity. Then history gets manipulated, and the false history gets embedded in the minds in the form of symbols, narratives, tropes, identities, just like the swastika. We all were taught that swastika is something really bad. That's how it was perceived in the West. But then in India, it is not so. So if we are not alive, if you don't know, if you're not alert, and you're not connected to your heritage, then you would swallow the Western universalism, which says that swastika is the symbol of the Nazis. So Western accounts of history, philosophy, and identity are imposed upon us if we are not connected to Sanatana Dharma. And that also leads to appropriation of intellectual and cultural property. So we have seen how yoga has got appropriated, Ayurveda has got appropriated, and it has all been taken out from our Hindu heritage, and it has become a part of the Western heritage, simply because we were not alert and we were not connected. The other problem is that the Western reductionist approach is very binary. The Western approach is reductionist and it's binary. So they have categories of sacred, secular, monotheistic, polytheistic, political left, political right. And so we are forced to fall into those categories. So if we want to avoid the dangers of Western universalism, then we have to be rooted in our civilization and our educational heritage. And this is an example that I like to give about how, when you don't have a Bharatiya Drishti, how it affects the environment and everything else. So a long time ago, when there were no hill stations, when we were not colonized, then we would go and we perform these Tirth Yatras. We would go to temples located on mountains. So there would be some difficult journeys, but also fun and enjoyable because people would go in groups, sharing all their food. And then they would make the journey, go to this temple, pray to the deity, and then they would come back. So this is the way it used to be. This was a holiday come yatra. Whereas today, what has happened, those very centers, after the colonizers came, when the British came to India, whenever they felt very warm and the weather has got very hot, they would go to the hill station. So they built a whole infrastructure in the hill station for relaxation, right? Enjoyment. And that's the model that we are following today, because we lost our Bharatiya Drishti. So we go to Shimla, we go to Manali just to enjoy, so that's how so many hotels are built there. No longer is it a Tirthasthana. All these places are, the Tirthasthana part is minimalized, and it's all about enjoyment, playing golf, swimming, and only those kind of things. And then people just go there for a few days, stay in a room, come back. They would not go and visit the temples of that area, which was being done in ancient times. So this shift in the drishti is what has caused a lot of damage. We also lost terminology because of deracination. So that's another thing. When you're not connected to your heritage, the West is giving us technology. So we hear now, for example, One Water. When I was the editor of Asian Water, in one of the conferences, I was told that there was a big celebration because they launched this new term called One Water. And then they went on the stage, the experts talking about how, the humans, animals, plants, they all use the same water. So we should be conscious that it's the same water being used by everybody. So we should call it one water approach. And I was very astonished because this is exactly the approach that Indians always had, which was changed when we were colonized. And that's how water became like for the human beings alone. And we don't care for water needed for agriculture, water needed for other animals, and so on. So these terms, we lost the terms also because of colonization. One Health is another approach that they are giving to us now. After taking away our lenses, now we are being taught by the Western world about how we should protect water resources, how we should regard that health. There's One Health approach, systems approach. If you look at systems approach, it's nothing but the Purushartha approach. The Purusha approach, sorry, Purusha. Everything is a Purusha. So connected systems which are all complementing each other. That is the Purusha approach. But today we call it the systems approach. Then there is this non-sleep deep rest, another big example of plagiarism and cultural appropriation, which is nothing but Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is called NSDR. And I don't know if you watched this interview of Sundar Pichai of Google, where he said that when he wants to unwind, then he does non-sleep deep rest because that helps him to sleep. And then it's astonishing that an Indian himself is talking about NSDR when it is actually Yoga Nidra. The other one is super brain yoga. You know, the punishment that used to be given to naughty children of holding the ears like this and then sitting up and down, which was called utak baitak in North India, and in Southern India, I think they call it toppu karanam or something. Now that is being packaged as super brain yoga, and it is being taught in order to calm down the hyperactive kids. So this is how we lost terminology. I think being rooted is necessary to avoid being erased. Okay. So if we want to hold on to Indian knowledge traditions, then we have to be rooted. Otherwise, it will be erased, appropriated, and it will be used to create false narratives. Uh, in the global discourse today, the source of all knowledge is Greek. So the father of everything that we have today will be some Greek. You know, Pythagoras is the father of that theorem. Democritus is the father of science. Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, Hippocrates, father of medicine. So there's very little acknowledgement of India's enormous contribution. And this is because of Indians themselves being deracinated. Yoga, Ayurveda, Dhyana, Pranayama, all these have been secularized and dissociated from Sanatana Dharma. And there's a growing industry that seeks to demonize Hinduism, yoga, Brahmins, ceremonies like Vivaha, then caste, patriarchy. Caste is being seen as something very Indian, you know, which is not correct when you look at the global history. Patriarchy, everything is being looked at from the lens of patriarchy. Malicious content is being created and targeted at the youth. So that is why our educational heritage matters. We need to use our own dharmic frameworks, which is a way of getting back our drishti. So we should understand, we should use these terms like Chaturashrama, the Triguna approach, Purushartha approach, Karma theory, the Pancha Mahayagya. And there are so many other frameworks. Once we start getting rooted in our Shastras, when we learn Sanskrit, when we go back into our true history, then we'll start looking at the world with our drishti. And I would make a case that with that drishti, we will do a lot of good for the world. So this is why we need to know our educational heritage and be totally connected with it. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation. And this is the book I wrote called Revisiting the Educational Heritage of India, which has all these things that I talked about. You can reach me on Twitter or Facebook, Instagram. You can also email me. So these are my contact details. With this, I'll stop sharing. And if you have any questions, I will answer them. Thank you very much.
Tiwari ma'am?
Could I ask a question?
हाँ
Yeah, my question is about the pronunciation, which has been westernized even by the speaker.
I think you've been muted. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me
Dr.
now?
Sahana ji,
Yes.
very nice presentation,
Thank you.
full of information, full of interest.
Thank
And we were feeling like that we are traveling the education process and education system and other related things.
Thank you.
So according to me, it was a very good and great presentation. So now paper is open for question and answer, and this is open for everyone to ask or comment or something. I will request Dr. Dhananjay Bhanj, who is a journalist and a teacher also. Please take up this program of question answer, because I am not able to open the chat box and relate everything. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Dr. Dhananjay
Good.
Bhanj, he is in Gujarat and teaching in Sanskrit, and he is running a newspaper also. Every day that newspaper is published in Sanskrit.
Oh,
So he is doing work very
Namaste.
Ji.
Good evening to one and all. Truly, this is a nice presentation, and I was expecting that this should be complicated for myself, but after listening everything, it is self-explanatory, so nothing to add. So I am thinking that questions will be very less because very self-explanatory speech and only one not question exactly. So many comments are coming. Excellent speech. Congratulations, madam. Very nice, madam. Ativa Shobhanam. Te Upasthapanam. Ityadi, ityadi. So
Okay.
one is Kamlesh Kapoor sir is asking as an historian. He finds it a lot of hurdles in transfer of this knowledge to our next generation. Can we figure out some practical steps to transfer this knowledge? On this, ma'am, you can throw some light, and sir also, Kamlesh sir also, she wants also to give few comments also. So first, ma'am, you take this question, how we have to pass on this, transfer this knowledge to our next generation. This is the first question.
I think what we have to do is to now we have to use all the tools available to us to create our narrative, right? So we have to do that. We have everything today. So now we cannot say that. So we are not. We have come out of that period of colonization. So we need to have the policies where the education system is changed. To some extent, that's already happening in India, right? So we need to teach the new education policy, national education policy we have, whereby the Indian knowledge systems are now becoming an elective. So students can now, when they are studying engineering and various other subjects in India, they are able to choose an elective that that has to do with IKS, Indian knowledge systems. So that is helping in a small way to get some understanding. There are many other ways. I also feel that anyone who is introduced to Sanskrit learning will, even at the most basic level, will feel very impressed and will, if it is taught well, because that's how even I started delving more and more, because I used to think that Sanskrit is a very difficult language, even though I come from a family where my grandfather, his father, all of them were very well-known pandits or grammarians, Vyakarnas. But for me, because of this colonization, I thought Sanskrit is very hard. But when I started learning it, then the beauty of it started revealing itself to me, and I wanted to know more and more. So sometimes I feel all you have to do is to just show to the new generation the science behind all that we did, and that will fascinate them and make them want to know more. So we have to create the interest. Nothing can be forced down the throat of anybody. We have to create that interest. So I wish that there will be more movies made on this topic, movies, documentaries, and in this way we draw in the new generation. So I think for that we all have to become very good communicators. We have to become very good parents who are able to inspire our own children. Because many of the people I'm noticing that they are not able to inspire their children. They might be great role models, but their children don't want to be like them. And so they don't want to do all these things like going to temples, praying, chanting. For them, it's all mumbo jumbo. Or they don't even like to hear that we were the greatest civilization, because when they see India today, they're looking at India today and judging it by what India is today. Oh, it's dirty. The streets are dirty. People don't know how to speak well. So how can we be the greatest civilization? So this conversation has to happen. We have to have this conversation with the younger people, which I'm trying to do. So, I mean, there's no real good answer for this. I think we are all trying in our own way to...
Actually, this modern era society, that the impact of media, impact of TV, television, impact of mobiles, that also hampers the teaching process of elders to younger generation. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Now, our Kamlesh Kapoor himself wants to add some comments. So if he is present here, he can add.
Okay, I'm Kamlesh Kapoor. I started this journey that you have started talking about, the entire knowledge system, in 1985. I'm that old. So, and I have 5 decades of experience teaching. So I found out the same kind of, you have done a tremendously concise kind of presentation. Your work must be elaborate, but this was a very succinct and to the point presentation. Now, coming back to the question that I wrote myself, how to teach Hindu Dharma. So it was Hindu Dharma teaching guide, starting from 4 years old children, how to relate to them and teach, and give them the experience of Dharma. Similarly, the history of ancient India, that was published 680 pages, 2010. And very surprisingly, it was written relating past to present. It was written as a textbook. And PhD students all over the world are quoting from that, whereas it was written for 9th, 10th graders. So, transfer of knowledge, that is my problem also. Because if it is good to write, Rajiv has written, we worked together, Rajiv, in 1998. And then, the question was how to transfer. So what I did, I said the best way of doing it is not writing books as like a philosophy system, but do it like experiential lessons. So, as you say, that forest is the first place where a child can learn a lot. And I'm just giving an example. I'm adding on for the knowledge, for you all to expand on this my experiments, how to transfer it. Because I had grandchildren when I started writing, and I said they are not going to read the garbage written in Western books. I live in Virginia, so by the age they are 13, I have to do something. But I started doing earlier under the heading diversity, tolerating it. And then I started Indian civilization just after the first 3 slides. And I started from 5-year-old onwards to the college level student as a presenter. Now, the very first thing, the lesson, for example, for a 4-year-old, they don't know anything. So I put it in, my framework was, who am I? Where am I? And what is my connection to the rest of the Prakriti and the cosmic reality? This is the framework. So I would take them outside and, who are you? I am so-and-so, my name, my father's name, where I live, blah, blah. And then I'll say, what do you see? Where are you? I am in it, here. And this is now linking to Prakriti. And when you are showing them, look what happened in September, look what happened in spring, and whole of this thing, it is nature appreciation. And this is the foundation of building environmentalism. And all this green climate change, green conservation issues, you see. And the question of change of form, transformation, which is incarnation. Things don't remain the same. They keep changing. So that kind of experiential approach stays on because it is at the level and experience. I do not use the word God and God is not even a word. In our language system, it is Bhagavan, who is born to die. And then the cosmic divine is a separate thing. So what I'm saying it's not so short, the comment is long, but all of us, we have to write for the Waves conference, which is coming, at least 5 ways to connect to the younger generation. How can...
Excuse me, ma'am. Actually, our honorable speaker, she will leave to her native place. It will take 4 or 5 hours time by road. So she is telling that whatever the comments or suggestions, briefly can summarize. So other questions we can take up.
More comments are not needed. My request is that all of us scholars have a teamwork and each one should give a couple of suggestions how to reach and make inroads in the psyche of our Dachshunds. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, ma'am.
I am 86 years old,
Yeah,
so I have voice problem also. So,
no problem.
what I have done, I have done. And now I want you to continue.
Yes, ma'am. Our speaker, ma'am, told about
Thank you.
the attributes, four
Thank you, Dr.
attributes of
Kapoor.
learning and
I,
nature. The
Thank
first
you.
time she told also nature.
I
So,
have Dr. Kapoor's book. It's very useful to me. I mean, you have
yes,
done so much work. It's just unbelievable that at that time, from 85 onwards, you have been doing all this. No, I was just saying
thank
that
you,
I
ma'am.
have to drive back 4 hours. So
Okay,
just have about
thank you,
another
ma'am. But
minutes.
there are only two questions.
Okay.
One, Madan Lal Goyal ji is waiting with another question or some comments.
Okay.
Let him to talk about his views. Madan Lal ji.
Ajay, this is Professor Madan Goyal from Florida. Question about pronouncing the Sanskrit words like pap becomes papa, dharma becomes dharma, nam becomes nama, and so on and so forth. Purusharth becomes purushartha. Is there a danger in giving up on the correct pronunciation and anglicizing the Sanskrit words?
Okay, I think there is a common misunderstanding when we say papa, people are thinking that we are anglicizing it. It should actually be pap. Some people,
Yeah.
but it's wrong because unless there is a halant, we have to pronounce it fully. It is papa. It is yoga. It is not yog. It is Rama because ma, there is no halant before under ma. Only if there is a halant, we must say Ram. So the problem is that people who speak in Hindi, they do not know that they do not know the Sanskrit pronunciation of those very words. So when they say Ram in Hindi, they think everybody else should be saying Ram. Whereas actually it is Rama in Sanskrit. It's not Rama, which is wrong, but it's Rama. So it is that has to be pronounced. It is yoga, it is dharma. So it's not dharma. Dharma is wrong. Dharma is Hindi, but dharma is correct in Sanskrit. So I think that a lot of Hindi speakers
Yes.
problem.
Even
Yeah,
Dhananjay, there is a. So people are calling Dhananjaya, they think I am a lady, Dhananjaya. But my name is Dhananjaya. And
Dhananjaya.
Govinda, excess use of Govinda, Nach. So Govinda is a hero, actor, male actor, but Govinda. So they are pronouncing A,
You
adding
have to
proper
pronounce the
A.
That is Sanskrit.
Sachin,
It's not
yeah,
but
Sachin, Rahul,
Dr. Dhananjay ji,
Sachin, Rahul, Saurabh, these
Correct.
names,
Dr.
English
Dhananjay
names.
ji, please
Correct.
Yes,
आगे बढ़ेंगे
yes.
आगे
So I think from my side, I have
the
to
chat
say
box,
something
please.
within two
Please see the
minutes.
chat box.
Yes,
Please see the chat box and then
yes, ma'am.
read out.
I
There
want
are
to
some
ask a
hands are there.
question.
Yes, ma'am. So Anil Maheshwari ji,
Thank
Anil
you. Thank
Maheshwari.
you. Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation. I'm at Maharishi International University in Fairfield, Iowa. We live this style. We teach according to Gurukul style. We have forest academies. We teach
Wonderful.
in Vastu architecture building. I would love to invite you to see what you are talking about. And we have block systems, so it's Gurukul style. One student with only one teacher for a whole month. We teach one topic, and there's holistic learning. But that's just addition. I would suggest a lot of points that you made resonated with me. Um, this whole. I just came back from Mount Kailash, so just being like, hey, so the whole thing about this whole yatra versus the pilgrim, the whole hill station thing, it very real to me. I also like this thing point, and if I have to just say one more point, is about this notion of stories. It has really hit me very deeply. I'm an engineer from Delhi, like from DTU, like that. So a lot of technical knowledge gets imparted to stories very effectively. And the case in point is Manjul Bharga, who won the Fields Prize. He said, he used to hate mathematics in school. And I was curious why. He says, the way I learned math was because I used to go to my grandfather's place in Jaipur. And he would always tell me stories during summer vacation. And I would read his books. Just like math slid through the
Yes.
back door in my mind. I think that's the most effective way. So even when Rameshji and I have your book also, you had come here 2014, we had hosted Waves conference there, so would be delighted. Even Dharma has to be taught like that.
Correct.
to
Agree.
story, not like. So I just wanted to appreciate everything you presented.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Did and would love to invite you to come and experience our place.
I would love to come and visit. I've heard a lot about it.
Okay, good. We'll talk more.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now we have to take Lalan Prasad sir's question. Lalan, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
It's very comprehensive and interesting talk, madam.
Thank you.
I just wanted to observe that the tools which have been used in education, these pedagogical tools which you have taught, particularly memorizing, that has a limitation in the present context. The job which memorizing could do in past is now being done by computers and by mobiles and the electronic media and so on and so forth. And the knowledge has expanded so much that you can hardly memorize things in that way which have been done in past. So what is the practical approach, or what will be practical approach that can be adopted where memorizing can also be there, and the storing of knowledge in different electronic medias can be combined to expand education?
So see, there is a danger today that we are depending too much on technology and not using the full capacity of our brain. That is why I brought back this memory training, which is a whole chapter in my book. Because today we are unable to even remember anything more than our own phone number. We cannot remember the phone numbers, right? So slowly, as technology is getting more advanced, our brains are shrinking and we are not able to remember, because we think we can look up Google anytime we want. We can look up the hard drives whenever we want. And that is why I'm saying we need to bring back that old way of memorizing, because then what will happen? We'll have a lot of knowledge in our mind itself, and that helps to increase our cognition. So imagine if you have entire books in your head, and then when you're making decisions, then those things are already in your head, so you're able to make better decisions. So, and they have found that with those who are learning the Vedas, that the cognitive part of your brain expands because of learning all this, using the memory training techniques. So what I'm calling for is to bring back those techniques to today's education, so that you will then memorize whatever is very important for you in your field, and that will make you better in your own field, is what I'm saying. I think this needs to be explored, how to expand our memories so that we can remember 4, 5, 6 books, entire books in our head, and many other things. It will actually might help us to even become better persons, because, in the times of distress, all that knowledge will come to you about how you should face this situation. All those slokas will come to your mind. All those things will come to your mind. And then you know that you should not lose hope and you should do what needs to be done. So I feel that memory training will help in many other areas of your character as well. It's challenging, but it's doable at a young age. If you see even today in the Gurukulas, how the students are memorizing so much. So why is it not available to students in the mainstream education? Why are they not able to remember anything? That's my question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, next question comes from Dr. Y.K. Wadhwa, sir, that you told about games. Through games, we can learn. So where can we find traces of games? You mentioned
Oh, games today are still, those Indian games are being revived. I know many people who are doing this.
Very good presentation, madam.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, Dr. Balramji, you said that?
नमस्कार. नहीं अभी हमने बोला नहीं.
अच्छा ठीक. Okay.
मैं हाई स्पीड में चल रहा हूँ. मुझे लगता है मेरी मेमोरी अच्छी है.
तो
आपकी तो अच्छी होगी ना, आप तो संस्कृत पढ़े हैं.
नमस्कार मैडम, my simple question is
please sir, hold on a second, let Balramji speak, please.
Okay, just very quick
Okay,
question.
you will be next. You will be next.
Two quick questions. Two quick questions. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Two quick questions. One is related to memory. Just I heard, is memory more important or experience? And my second question is, all these Vidarbha universities and Nalanda universities we are calling, were they really known as universities? And if there is a difference, because the first university that came out in 1058, University of Bologna in Italy. Before that, they were not known as university. So calling university, are we doing service or disservice? Thank you.
Yes, so I'll take the second question. So I'm actually using the university word in a very loose way. So I'm calling it, that's why sometimes higher educational centers, because nowadays there is this strict definition of university. But I am calling in my, what I'm saying in my book is that don't disregard those forest universities, as I call them, just because they were not having brick and mortar buildings, just because you don't have an actual degree being given in the hand of the students. Do not think of them in any lesser way, because they were giving the foundational knowledge that we are still building upon today. Because they had their own system of teaching, they had their own milestones whereby they would judge whether a student is now fit to go to the next level of learning. So I would definitely call them university. Nalanda, for example, would also be called a university. Nalanda, of course, now is accepted as a university by many, even the Western scholars that I speak to, simply because I guess they have that huge building and because foreign students came there and left accounts about Nalanda University, right? And there is a lesser tendency to regard Takshashila as a university because it's even more ancient. What I'm saying is if you expand the definition of university a little bit and take it as different disciplines being taught under the supervision of one presiding guru or teacher, then maybe you can still call all of them as universities. That's what I would say. But strictly, it may not hold in today's terms. So I would rather use maybe higher educational centers in order not to be controversial. So Bologna and all these, they are just because in a Eurocentric world, they have given the definition of universities. So then they will say, okay, from Bologna onwards, those were universities. Nalanda was not, because where is the certificate showing that somebody got a degree from Nalanda, right? But we have evidence that Vikramshila was actually awarding, degrees. In Vikramshila, we hear of awarding of degrees. So that is around the same time that Nalanda existed. So I think that's a bit of a term that has to be, it's a bit of sparring in which will happen. I can't give the answer, a hard answer for this. But the other question about memory and experience, I don't know why we should even pit them against each other. Why can't we have both? I mean, experiential learning as well as memory training. I think memory training is extremely important because that's the way we are able to store large amounts of data in our head. And that will not stop us from any experiential learning as well, isn't it? So our Gurukula education was a combination of experiential learning and memory-based learning. So that's what I think, that's the holistic learning that I'm advocating for in my writing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I just brief comment on both of them.
Okay.
There is a learning center is different than universities. Universities by definitions are like some association. Someday we can discuss this, Sahana. And what happens is then we have a chancellor, we have dean, because this is all terms that comes from church. And so they grab all those authorities and we have like that. My concern is only that. Learning center is much, much better, but that's okay. I mean, I see the reason is that if you call it university, then you have a chancellor of the Nalanda University, you have dean of this, and they start behaving exactly like what British had created for
But
us.
we did have the Kulapati of the various universities. There was a Kulapati. They
Kul
had
is different.
processes,
Kul is different than chancellor. Dean is different than whatever you had termed there. They are very different. The dean is supposed to be in the church environment. Dean is supposed to be beej bachao karne wala hota, the one who keeps the people away from the priests, because they may have a difference of opinion or something.
Okay.
If you really look at their literal meaning. So what happens is they behave, the system has been created, not what you are talking. I mean, kul means everything.
Correct.
Everything that the person does has to be honorable. Pati matlab हम लोग क्या आप शायद उधर की आप भी
But
हैं.
don't you think we should push back and say that we were also universities? Because
We were
otherwise,
better than university. These
we were
people
better.
are already, they are already moving into that direction. Now they are having professors of practice. So that just shows that, we will have to go through them to come back to us, when we really should claim that we are it, because that's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're coming back to. I mean, anyway, I can go long. I don't want to take that much time, but even as a professor, we were asked to do things. I was given 1 day a week free time to run my own business, because so that a student can learn better. So they are coming back to that, which is not the based on what their system they had. But the point of memories is a very good idea. The only thing is that people then limit themselves to only memories. That's the problem.
No, memory, I feel like it's got a bad name. It's termed, it is considered synonymous with rote learning. And rote learning is
Yeah.
considered to be something done by ignorant people who don't understand the subject and they're just learning it by heart. So
Yeah, we had waves Kulgeet that said Veda Dhyan,
right,
not Veda practice.
right. So I
So
would say that
just see that what is happening to us.
yeah. So I think
Thank you.
In this
So,
reference,
ma'am,
can I say
Sanaji,
yes.
Sanaji, this
I
is
want to say
Dirusha
one
here.
point.
You've done
ma'am,
a fantastic job.
actually,
Namaste,
we are
thank you.
running short of
Can I
time,
say,
ma'am.
Yeah, that's why I'm just
We are
saying
running
thank you
can I
short
so
of
say
much for.
time.
something?
So, another two
In
questions we
this
have to take.
discussion, I
Dr.
want to
Alkash
add.
Pandey ji and Bhaskar Nath Bhattacharya ji. Only two questions you have to take in brief. Ashalata Pandey madam, you can ask your question now.
Namaskar. Sanaji, compliments for your lecture. I just wanted to know, did you find any references of, like you mentioned, carpentry and hair cutting were taught in Gurukuls or what you call forest schools?
No, no,
Any of the
no,
references?
no.
Because
So the
as
skills were always in the homes of the artisans.
yeah,
Yes.
that,
So
oh,
what I
that's
meant
what I
is there
thought.
were
But
two.
did you find? That was my
Yeah,
question. Thank you.
Vedic knowledge would be in the forest universities or various ashrams, but all the trades were taught in the homes, the home-based industries of these artisans.
And did you personally visit any of these central universities which you showed in your map?
Yes, some
Many
of
of them.
Yes, I have visited some of the ancient universities, but right now my focus today is on the Gurukulas because I am pushing for Gurukula, reviving Gurukula education. And I'm meeting also a lot of people, startup Gurukulas, people who are like you and me who have started Gurukulas because people are fed up with mainstream education. A lot of parents don't want to send their children to the mainstream schools and they are starting Gurukulas. So I have been visiting a lot of Gurukulas in order to see how they are running and what are the good aspects of education that they have, which mainstream education doesn't have. And that is where I'm focusing on now.
Thank you.
Mr. Bhanja, please call Dhiru sir.
Yes,
Please.
Dhiru sir ji, please, Dhiru sir, please, it is your turn now.
No, I don't want to ask a question because Sanaji I know very well. And I just wanted to thank a lot, Sanaji, for what you have done. And we look forward to having you again and again several times.
Thank you.
And we will see you in a Waves conference soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So
Just quickly,
now,
I saw one question here about caste,
Professor
right?
Bhaskar
Somebody
Nath
has-
Bhattacharya ji.
Okay.
No, I think he is not in meeting. Bhaskar Nath Bhattacharya sir is here. Hand is raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
साना जी,
Yes.
क्या आप सुन सकती हैं?
Yes.
अच्छा, ठीक. The way of your thinking is wonderful to advise. I want to attack you personally.
Attack me.
This is the, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. This is the only way, I think. I don't know how many children you have. You have to give them teaching Sanskrit language and literature. You have to teach your neighbors' children language, Sanskrit language and literature. Otherwise, you see, we all white-headed person are sitting here and following your lecture and clapping our hands. I only can see Adarsh Anand, young chap only. No young chap is here.
Correct.
Then we have, if we want to make it enthusiastic or make it alive, charity begins at home. I have 6 children. I taught them entirely Sanskrit language and literature. Otherwise, it will be impossible. I am pushing my son, we are pushing our son or children to medical science, computer science. Nobody of us are pushing our children to teach Sanskrit language and literature. And that is why I am asking charity schemes at home. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. No, I understand what you're saying. We need to have more young people taking interest in this, and that is exactly the issue.
No, we have to start it from our home,
In our
from
homes.
our family,
Right.
from our family.
Right.
If you
Okay,
can
thank
teach,
you, sir.
if you can teach your son, if you can teach your daughter, it will be impossible. Public will attack you. Then you yourself.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now we will go to, because no time is there. Madam is busy. So now I may request our President, ma'am, Professor Shashi Tiwari ji, to conclude with her own views and own suggestions. Madam, you are muted.
You're on mute, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The discussion which was held here proves that presentation was very, very good, very thought-provoking, and very interesting. So everyone listened and want to ask something. I actually want to comment on the discussion which was going on about university, calling university. I think, and Bhaskar Bhattacharya ji will agree with me, that today, even today, the institutes which are teaching Sanskrit as Kendriya Sanskrit Vishwavidyalaya, under whom there are 12 great universities, so they are not called Sanskrit. And after a long sangharsh, long discussion, and in the parliament, now they are called University, Central University of Sanskrit. So, university term is actually very limited, used very carefully even today. This was my humble submission. And I noted few points of your discourse and your discussion, which were very important, and everyone should remember them time to time. As in our ancient educational system, knowledge is the most important, and the person who is having that knowledge is the most important. In all the Upanishads, in everywhere where Gyan is given, the person who wants to know about anything will go to the person who knows that. Even nothing has to be done to its class, etc. As there is a story of Raku and King Pravaha. So like that, everywhere there are many narrations, and especially three type of um, tools were there for education. As first was student going to teacher, near teacher, and as everyone knows, Gurukul Paddhati, and he used to live there for 14 years, and all knowledge was given to him, not only about the scriptures, but about instrument, about everything, about war also, about Ayudh also. So 14 years, that is the reason 14 years were there for that. As Ramchandra, you may remember, as Krishna Chandra, Sandipani Ashram, you may remember. So this was the first type of education. Then the second was dialogue, samvad, parisamvad. And there are so many dialogues where knowledge is given. In Gita also, it is a samvad going on. The person who is curious is asking questions. And the third type of way was conference, parishada. And its example is in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where Janak has called a parishada of all the great sages of the country, and they are discussing every day while their sacrifice is going on. So knowledge was the most important, and there was nothing who the person who knows was important. Karma was important, but no, karma was second, because if karma is done is kam karma, then he will be able to get knowledge. So like that philosophy says, and I uh, don't want to praise every time, because everyone has a glimpse of his her scholarship and abilities, and I am, as I was telling, that she is a good narrator and very stylish speaker and attractive language and style she used. So she was pronouncing the alphabet of Sanskrit and all that, Ghan part, etc. She was showing. So, Sahana ji, very, very thanks, many, many thanks to you. And I wish you will be again give us your time, and will be in the gathering of waves scholars. Here I am surprised to see all persons who are sitting over here are great scholars. Great scholars means great scholars. And no one is, you, as you have pointed out, others only. That, that was very true. Otherwise, everyone, Supriya Chopra is also very knowledgeable. So everyone, Mosme Chatterjee, and you can read out the, all our professors or scholars of different universities, from Allahabad University to Calcutta University to Assam, and as Maharshi University, Anil Maheshwari ji was there, and others also. So I am very happy that it is very successful program, and all the audience is also our thanks are to audience also for giving and for time, and be here and make our program a success. Thank you very much. And I will finally like to say to Dhananjay, please say few words in the honor, in the gratefulness of audience.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, there is before concluding with Thanksgiving and Shanti part, I will say 2 lines only. There are 3 types of teachers are there in our school level. There is a story that first level teacher is physical teacher, like bird. Bird gives eggs, and on the egg that bird will sit till that egg will come out as a bird. So fully physical touch, like pre-primary or primary level. In middle school, secondary, higher secondary school level, slowly students are growing up. That time the teacher becomes like a fish. His children are moving here and there in the pond, but fish will not visible. When someone is attacking, then fish will come to protect as a mother. So that time it is visionary teacher. Just at distance, mother will look after the children. In the school also, in higher secondary, or up to college, up to graduation, teachers are just coming lecture method, not like pre-primary, raising hand, putting hand, physical relation in another sense, physically attachment. And in the spiritual knowledge, third type, like a कछुआ, जो कछुआ जैसे अंडा देता है, दे के चला जाता है समुद्र में, वो उम्मीद रखता है एज ए मदर, मेरे बच्चे तो जरूर आएंगे, आते भी हैं. तो वो जो स्पिरिचुअल नॉलेज होता है वो सबसे हाईएस्ट ग्रेड का होता है. थैंक यू मैम. ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ वेब्स इंडिया, वेब्स यूएसए, बोथ. So on behalf of Dhiru Sahas ji, on behalf of our president of this program today,
Balram.
हाँ, Shashi Tiwari ma'am ji and Professor Balaram Singh ji.
Balram Singh ji, special thanks.
Ji, Professor Balaram ji and all other seniors, juniors, contemporaries, and special
Bhattacharya ji.
Yes, Bhaskarnath Bhattacharya ji. So I think this is a mini world now, all over India. So even from Odisha, from Assam, Gopalendra Goswami ji, so many scholars are here. Maximum participants are there, and overall I will thank our others Anand sir Actually, his role I am playing without his permission. So great, big thanks to Adarsh Anandji and all our passive and active participants and raisers of the questions. So thank you, ma'am. And so many comments came in the chat box. We want such type of lectures once more. At least once you have to come again very soon in the Waves platform. And hopefully all our esteemed gathering, the members, they will support my statement that this type of gathering, August gathering, it will enhance our knowledge along with our coming generation. Thank you, ma'am. Hope we enjoy and we will implement in our life as Bhattacharya sir told, charity begins at home. So we will try our maximum level best to yield the best result from your speech. Thank you. Have a nice time. Good night. Now I will chant a simple Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. Please, all of you join.
ধন্যবাদ দিলে ধনঞ্জয় সাহেব খুব ধন্যবাদ দিলে
सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामया सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् शान्तिः धन्यवाद
नमो नमः
नमो नमः नमो नमः
सर्वेभ्यः नमो